Here we go. We are live. Greetings, greetings, family. Sister Shanice in the house for another Wednesday edition of the Sister Shanice Show. As you can see, we've got our guest, Pusch Commey, in the house. Rise up, my brother Pusch. How you doing?
No, I'm good. I'm good over here in South Africa. And greetings to everybody from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Oh, it's a pleasure and an honor to have a brother from way over the other side of the world join us this evening on the Sister Shanice Show. And of course, Pusch is not new to this platform. We have had the brother on the show in the past. He has an amazing catalogs of books that he's written and a great story to tell every time. So, really excited about this program. So as you come through the door, yeah, just let us know that you are in the house and that, you are watching us. Yeah, send out some messages. Let people know that we are live and coming direct across the airways today. So family, it's a privilege as always to be able to come before you, and to everyone who's been supporting the Sister Shanice Show channel over the years, I thank you so much. I think last strong I remembered I got such a surprise when I discovered from the analytics, the YouTube analytics, that I had actually achieved over 1 million views. But of course, I didn't do that on my own. It was because of you, my wonderful audience and supporters, that I managed to achieve that accomplishment. So thank you all so much for that. So welcome. We've got a great lineup today, and in the coming strong, some say week, we say strong. We've got a great lineup for you. Let me just go over actually and let you know who we've got coming up. Well, I don't even need to check, but I know that next. Oh, oops. Hang on a moment. Why am I hearing myself back? Whoop. There we go. Is that you, my brother Pusch?
No.
Have you just put on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube.
make sure you put YouTube on mute. Make sure you've got YouTube on mute. And put yourself on mute. Hang on. Like, okay, I've just muted you. Oh, dear, maybe it isn't our brother. I don't know what's going on here. And I'm still hearing some feedback. Let me just check. Right. No, yeah, YouTube is muted. Okay, apologies for the feedback if you're hearing any feedback there. So I'm not sure where that extra echo is coming from. My brother Pusch, are you hearing the feedback?
Yes, I am. Okay, let me do this. Let me just shut down my laptop.
Okay, let me just remove you from here for a moment, and then. Okay, let me just remove you from here for a moment. It's all going on here. Sometimes I get a feedback when when I've got YouTube up, but I can see that YouTube is actually on mute, so I'm not sure why this is. So I really do apologize. I think if I just shut everything down, maybe that would might clear the system. Okay, so I'm just clearing the system. I'm just locking everything down, and hopefully that will get rid of wherever that feedback is coming from. Let me know in the audience, are you getting this awful feedback? Are you hearing me coming through twice? And if you are, my sincere apologies. Okay, let's add you back to the stream. It definitely isn't you because I'm still hearing it. Yeah, Imhotep, thank you for letting me know that you've got an echo coming in. Let me mute myself. Pusch, please.
Yeah, but I can hear you.
Welcome the audience. I'm going to try and find out what this is.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Yeah. Okay, I think it stopped. Maybe. Can you hear me? The hello.
Yes, I'm hearing you. I've put myself on mute so that I cut this awful echo. Yes, go ahead. I've put myself on mute so that I cut this awful echo. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, right. Okay. I can hear you. It must be from your side because I don't know whether mine also echoes. Mine doesn't, right? I don't hear an echo from my side, yeah. But I can hear your voice echo. Yeah, but we can carry on. I think it doesn't disturb anything. Yeah.
I found the little bug. It was playing through WhatsApp as well.
All right. I think it's
Oh,
okay now.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
that's
you're
okay now. It's made me so hot. I need to go and get myself a tissue. So yes, family, we're there. We're ready for rock and roll. The audience is coming through the door. My brother Push is in the house, and we're ready to rock. Let's see who we've got in the house. We have Malanga in the house, Tendamwari, Black Hatches, Zachary is in the house from Chicago, Illinois. Welcome, welcome, welcome Kayanja as well. We also welcome KZ all the way from Uganda. Tianja is all the way in Bermuda. Wow, we've got our global audience in the house. Welcome, Kimali. Lovely to have you. Imhotep from UK, Manchester. Welcome, welcome. Yes, we've got our sister Afri Jamo from Ghana in the house. We've got who else we've got? We've got Swabri in the house as well, rising up the family. The family's coming through the door. We've got Angie in the house. Oh, brilliant, brilliant. We've got Tianja from Bermuda in the house. Absolutely fantastic. So, we're glad that you've joined us. Please put the word out there. Let everybody know that we are live. We have our brother Push in the house, and we've got a really interesting show lined up for you today. Just to let you know as well, do tune in next strong. We've got the King returning. We've got our brother King Joshua Mapongo returning next Wednesday. And if you well, you know what? Every single one of us, each and every one of us has leadership qualities and leadership potential. And our brother is going to be drawing that out. So next Wednesday, make sure you tune in, okay? Because we need to get the leadership, the right leaders amongst us as Africans. And our brother, oh, wow, 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 is a phenomenal leader in his own right. And we are honored to have the brother coming to us next strong to talk about what it takes to be a formidable African leader during these times. So look out for that. I've also just posted a video. We had our brother Leader Bandaka do a pre-recording with me yesterday. We were talking about the case of Tyree Nichols, the young African who was beaten to death by those five black African police officers. And our brother Leader Bandaka, he went deep, into what some of the, he explained for us, beyond what we see, what's happening to us as Africans, why some of us could actually commit such a gruesome act towards one of our own. And I think we all, need to watch that video. And so our brother has addressed that, and I've just posted that today. So after today's show, do check it out. So the family's coming in the house. Rise up, Sister Angie. Brother Gebra, rise up, rise up. Minoyena Babylon, never mind you here. Sister Angie, yes, licking up some drums for me tonight. Thank you so much, sis. Oh, thank you. Yes, yeah, lick up some drums for us. Humanitas, welcome all the way from Prague. Oh, enough love to you. All the way there in Prague, my brother. He's sending enough love out to us to the max. Mandele, Yenge Nka, Kiambote, my brother, Black Hat you. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our guest to you today. Okay, I mean, wow, wow, wow. We're honored to have our brother Pusch Commey in the house, and we got some claps going on there. Thank you for those claps. Let me just hide those right now. Thank you so, so much. So our brother Pusch was actually born in Ghana, but he lives in South Africa as a practicing advocate of the High Court of South Africa, and he's got his first degree, which was an honours in English and Spanish, which he got at the University of Ghana. Now, let me just pause right there because there may well be some listeners around the world who are thinking, you got honours in English and Spanish in Ghana. You know, some of our people probably think that there are no universities on the continent of Africa. So I wonder if you can just give us a little bit of history there, right there to start off with, my brother.
Yeah, right. University of Ghana has been there for a long time, since 1948. And Ghana had, some very illustrious universities. University of Cape Coast, University of Kumasi, science and technology. And look, currently, the last time I checked, they had about 56 universities. So the private ones and the public universities. So that's the whole thing. We the people really don't know about other African countries or what happens there. But now, with things opening up, I mean, you can see the diaspora in America, the migration down, and they're surprised.
The sound quality, sorry about that, Pusch. The sound is not very good. I hope it's not my end. I'm hearing a lot of crackling on the line. Are you? Oh, the gremlins are in the house tonight. Are you hearing a lot of crackling on the line?
Yeah, but I think it's okay now. It's
good.
Okay now. Yeah.
Oh no, it's just come back. Okay. What's causing it? We'll get this sorted and then we'll be ready to rock and roll, family. That sounds like someone's eating a packet of crisps down the line. What is that?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so we're just trying to sort this out. Let me just see. Let me just mute your end and see if it's okay. It's definitely your end because I just muted you and it stopped. So, my brother Pusch.
Yeah.
There's something really odd happening with your phone line.
When you speak, then it crackles. Okay. Hello. Is it better?
Yeah. Yes. No, but it keeps coming in and out. I think you might need to copy the link to your email.
When you speak, it crackles. I don't know. When I speak, it's okay.
It stops now.
When you speak, it crackles. When I speak, it doesn't. So.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work. It's not. Look, if I put you on mute, so I've just muted you now, and that awful sound has gone completely. But the moment I take you off mute, I've just taken you off mute. I can hear it coming through again. So, can you quickly maybe use maybe an earphone? Might do the trick. Do you have earphones that you can use, my brother? Or can you copy the link to your email? We've got to do this quickly.
Okay.
Okay, let me put my brother backstage while he sorts that out for us. Hey, the gremlins are in the house tonight, but we are not going to be deterred. We are going to be pressing on with the show. My brother has got, a wealth of books that he has written. And there's so much that he's got to share with us. So we certainly hope that we get a really good line. You know, he's got best-selling titles and historical books such as The 100 Great African Kings and Queens. He's got a book entitled The 7 Amazing African Queens and Dynasties. Wow. And he's got some interesting fictional titles as well, with strong female characters. And so if you're looking for children's book, if you're looking for a good adult read, you know, children's titles such as Tofi's Fire Dance and Between Cindy and the Sea, you know, and he's recently published some historical fictions as well, like The Second Coming of Nelson Mandela. And I know that he's also republished a number of books recently as well, titles that, you know, are quite old. And so he's bringing them back to our attention. Got another book, a play that he wrote called The Trial of Lucy. I mean, this is a man who has been so busy for us as a community. Let's go back over to our brother Pusch, and let's hope, fingers crossed, that the problem has been resolved. Okay, let's bring our brother back. Oh no, it's still there. My brother Pusch.
Okay. Would you want me to? Hello. Yeah.
Yes. If you can copy the link, to your email and then log on via your laptop, it could be a problem with the phone. Are you able to do that?
Okay,
or WhatsApp me your email and I'll quickly do it. Okay, all right. So yeah, that's another option actually, would have been to go out and come back in again. So yeah, we are going to get there. Yes, Sister Afrojamo, yeah, it's definitely his line. When I muted him, I could hear that it's gone. Normally the problem's my end, isn't it? So I'm always ready to blame myself. Rise up, Sister Verna, in the house. Yeah, the sound quality is really, really bad. Yeah, so yeah, he's going to go out and come back in again, or copy the link to his email, so we can get our brother back in the house. Let me just show you, actually. Let me see if I can quickly pull up an image of some of his titles as well, just so that you can see some of the stuff that he's written from his catalogue. So while he's backstage and getting ready to come on, I'm just going to share screen, and so that you can see one of his see some of his works. Here we go. I can see he's backstage as well. So let me add him, and hopefully we haven't got the, yeah, I've added you back, and the really awful sound quality has gone. Yes. Yeah, the crackle is gone.
Yes. I clicked the link again. I put off the link and I put it back in.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Well, you know, in your absence, I was just about to share with the audience, you know, some of your titles. And so you can talk to them yourself now that you're back.
Okay. Well, basically, well, I practice as a lawyer, but I've had an interest in African history because then I thought one of the biggest problems that African faced was our educational curriculum. And then if there was that curriculum, it had to have material. So then I set up the Real African Writers series to recapture, you know, a good portion of African history through books like 100 Great African Kings and Queens, which I also adapted for children. And the whole purpose was, you know, if you went through Africa's illustrious and incredible history, and you capture in episodes the lives and times of some of these great African kings and queens, over 100, if you get 100 of them, you'll be able to have a panoramic view of African history from 5000 BC. So we went around to select most of these kings and queens, you know, for that purpose, and then set up a publishing company to publish most of them. And then beyond that are also fictional titles that are inspirational and that are Pan-African in orientation, you know, that captures the Pan-African experience. So in summary, that's what we've been trying to do, which I've put on Amazon and local bookshops in Africa, in South Africa, and hopefully, the most important is to get them through school as inspirations, and for them to be role models for our children for the future. So yeah, in short, that is what I've been doing with the Real African Writers series. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And I just love the artwork as well, on your books. The artwork is brilliant. You've got a great artist indeed. So let me just remind the audience what our topic is for discussion today, very importantly, because we want to make sure, let me just get that up on here as well. Because it's gone off of my here we are. So the topic title for today, family, is the biggest threat to the lie of white supremacy. It's ideology and mythology. We're going to be going into that fallacy of white supremacy today. And we're going to be talking about what the biggest threat of it is. So we've introduced you to our special guest today from Ghana. He's an author, he's a lawyer, he's a researcher. If he researches our African history, a scholar, and a great person to know, a very energetic, lively, and warm brother. And so let me go over to you, my brother, so that you can take away. Sorry about the start, but here we go. We're going to go for a nice clean start now to today's show. Over
All
to
right.
you.
Good evening, my brothers and sisters. Well, it's such a pleasure to be in your great company. Well, we have spoken to Shanice about this whole idea of white supremacy, but obviously she doesn't like the word much because it's a fallacy, and it doesn't even want to give it oxygen, because if we look at through history, if anybody is to claim supremacy, it must be black people, right? Because history tells us that we are the original man. We are the origins of civilization for millions of years, and all the civilization that you see around us today, and inventions, science, maths, writing, and even the use of speech, and everything that you see around us originated from Africa. But then what has happened is, over the last few hundred years, is people who have used, thuggery and force and destruction to literally try and obliterate that history, in the service for their own benefit, to create a certain pecking order where they dominate and continue to be at the top, and literally continue to plunder everybody and continue the big lie, up to today. And it's been so systematic that it's literally infiltrated our consciousness and our schools and our media and everywhere over the centuries. So that even when our children grow up, they believe, when they look around, they begin to think that everything that you see around you came from the white man. Some will tell you, but they brought us education. And then I tell them that we live in the formation age. Simply Google or look up the history of education. And then we discover that in ancient times, in the temples of Kemet or ancient Egypt, they had schools, that the Greeks went to study. And some of them did not even graduate. Your Plato's and your Socrates and all of them, some of them did not even graduate, and all these were there. And that the first universities were African. In the then Morocco, the University of Al Qarawiyyin, is noted as the oldest university in the world. And I'm not saying that if you Google it, Guinness World Records will tell you that. Or the universities in Mali, they dated from the 10th century AD. Oxford came in the 13th century, and the oldest university in Europe was Bologna in 1088 AD, more than 2 centuries after Africans had their universities. So the whole point I'm trying to make here is that then, over through colonial conquest and enslavement and all these things, what they have done is to try and do what? Erase, you know, African history. Because what does it do? The African history, if you know it, gives the lie to this whole idea that we are supreme, that they are supreme. They're not supreme. In fact, we Africans can rightfully claim supremacy, because the history, the true history, tell us so. So effectively, to come back to the point, what is the biggest threat to this whole idea? It was just an ideology, and that ideology arose because when they went out on organized crime, getting onto ships, learning how to navigate from the Moors or civilizations that lasted way long before them. I mean, if you go to Egypt, on the murals in the pyramids, you see sailing boats and all those things. They didn't bring about anything. What they've successfully done is to destroy and steal, right? And the Greeks themselves, are able to tell you that, look, we got all our knowledge, from ancient Egypt, which was Kemet, which was invaded several times. And then subsequently they changed the name to Egypt with the Greek conquest, by Alexander, who they called Alexander the Great, or Alexander the Greek, in 332 BCE. So to recap, the biggest threat, as the topic says, to this idea that the supreme, which they're not at all, is truth. And the truth can be found in the true African history. And at the end of the day, African history is actually world history. Over the holidays, I went to the Cradle of Humankind here in Maropeng in South Africa, and some of those fossils, are 2 million, years old, right? And Sheikh Anta Diop has said that, look, so the oldest fossils, dating 4 to 6 million years old, all of them can only be found, on the African continent. So effectively, we are the original people of the earth. And then everything that you see around you, from education to science, mathematics, to everything, it came from us. But what they've tried to obliterate is a philosophy, what they call damnatio memoriae. That's the erasure of memory. And it's been part of the tribes in Europe. That's what they do. You conquer another country, in their constant waging of war, and they try and obliterate everything, and then take it, appropriate it, and rewrite it, and change it, and then make it seem like their own. But the time has come for us to challenge all that, and it's our duty as the present, generation of Africans, is to simply tell the truth. And then when that happens, it's not just an exercise; it becomes very empowering for our children. Our children become very empowered when they go to school and they hear of the achievements of their forebears, when they know that it's their DNA that built the pyramids or built that Greek civilization, the Nile Valley civilization. And when they know that it's their forebears who went to Europe as the Moors and civilized Europe for 800 years. So then we begin to say, so what is 400, 500 years? That's all just going to disappear soon. And then order will be restored, right? When did you know about the history of the Mali Empire, which was the wealthiest empire of its time in the 14th century? Before then, in 1492, they started their disorganized crime from Europe. Then nobody can come and tell you that the Mali Empire, with the wealthiest man who ever lived, that Africa is the face of poverty. No, so yeah, African history is basically a restoration of what is rightfully ours, and a reclamation of it. And while writing all this history, including 7 amazing African kings and queens and 100 great African kings and queens, well, as a lawyer, I like evidence. So I have actually tested, brought up my daughter on them. And, you know, my daughter had the confidence. It's all confidence is half the battle won. When she got to know about all these African achievements, she went to school. She was not overawed. She was confident and she came out tops in everything. I was average at maths, but now here she was working up complex maths and coming up with top grades because she had the confidence that look, my ancestors that built all those did complex calculations to build all those pyramids that the Europeans today have not been able to figure out. And it's my ancestors that in places like Ethiopia built all those obelisks and Lalibela, rock-hewn churches from a single stone, a massive engineering feat, dating 800 years ago. That Europeans today, even with all the modern machinery, they cannot do from a single stone if you look at the UNESCO heritage site. So she was so empowered and so inspired that she went to university and she went to multiracial schools. I mean, we had Chinese, we had white people. And she came out tops, because she took her rightful place. And she went to university and did BSc computer science. And from the inspiration of all those books, she came out first class cum laude, right? And was working complex mathematical, computational mathematics. To my amazement, something that I really could never have, fathomed out. So then I just got to know that. So I've been growing up, and then they taught me all those false history. I mean, I ended up not very bright. She was much brighter than me. Anyway, but I just digress. But to carry on, why this is so important, and it's not me saying it. All the great scholars in history, from Carter Woodson to Marcus Garvey to Chancellor Williams, all of them have said the same thing. That the way to restore Africans and its diaspora and Black people all over the world is that the correct history must be told, and we should be writing it ourselves, because if we don't, and we allow other people to write it, they will distort it, they will obfuscate it, they will literally continue to lie about it, because they are running a philosophy or an ideology that we people are saying is called the false ideology of white supremacy. So if there's anything that the white people are very much afraid of, it is simply the truth. They're scared of the truth. So then what they would do, is to try and brand it as woke, brand it as cancel culture, brand this as critical race theory, giving a dog a bad name and trying to kill it. And then we can see it happening in the United States, where you have DeSantis, the governor DeSantis, saying that the Black history is of no educational value, because that's what they have to be afraid of. What they have to be most afraid of is Black history, because Black history tells the truth. And when their children get to know the truth, they are afraid that their children will feel diminished and they will feel inferior. And that goes against their ideology. Yeah, I'll just briefly pause. Shanice, is there, before I continue, maybe you've got some question or a bit of a contribution?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely agree with you, my brother, that, the concept of white supremacy is indeed a fallacy, is indeed. Oh, sorry, let me plug in my. Oh, I just noticed my battery's a bit low there. Yeah, it is indeed a fallacy. And I saw that Sister Afri Jamo was in agreement with that. She was saying it definitely is a fallacy. They are not supreme, quite the opposite. What's the opposite of supreme? Yeah, it's inferiority, isn't it? And I've got a little clip from a book as well, a little excerpt from a book, and I didn't even make a note to see which it was. And it says this: it says, Caucasians in general have an inferiority complex about their world position. If they were secure within their alleged superiority, they would not have to shout it to the world so often and so loudly. When a people feel called upon to repeatedly announce their superiority to the world, it is suspected that behind all their pretense, they do not believe it as much as they want other people to believe that they do. In contrast, if the same people believed in the inferiority of the rest of the world, its people and its cultures, they would not spend so much time trying to prove their point. Inferior things normally fall into an inferior position, and usually they stay there without any help from anybody. All the European laws, lies, manipulation, or religion have not kept most of the non European world in the inferior position the European world have assigned to it. And as I was reading that, I was thinking also, if Caucasians were, so confident about their superiority, why on earth would they be trying to claim, our history? Why would they be trying to claim, all of our greatness, our monuments, why would they be whitewashing, our artwork, our characters in history? Why would they be claiming them as their own? And our inventions, our creations, why would they be claiming them as their own? And it's just so true, what you were saying there about white supremacy being a fallacy. If it wasn't, they would not have to be claiming our history as their own. So I just wanted to drop that in, and I'll just quickly go over to the chat. And I want to welcome Brother Zizi Way, all the way from America. And he's saying we need a total change of the system. Yes, we do indeed. Kwame saying whites equal injustice and inequality. Absolutely. Let me go back to you, Brother Push.
All right. Well, to continue, let's give. I looked up a definition from Encyclopedia Britannica, and to the topic, how do they define it? And they define white supremacy as beliefs and ideas purporting natural superiority of the lighter skinned or white human races over other racial groups. In contemporary usage, the term white supremacy has been used to describe some groups espousing ultra nationalist, racist, or fascist ideas. And then often they have resorted to violence to achieve their goals. So, literally, that ideology is just a tool to be able to use their positions to steal from everyone, to suppress and steal from everyone, and then subsequently to try and gaslight the victims, right, of their atrocious behavior into accepting it. But at the end of the day, all of it have an economic motive. They use it to simply rise themselves to have a better life on earth, right, and pass it down to their progeny. But at the end of the day, you have some good quotes. I mean, from people. Not to say that all of them are bad. You do have a lot of the white people as well who know the truth. Like Count Volney, in which in the 17th century was an Egyptologist from France. And then when he went to examine the evidence in the Nile Valley, he concluded that this race for whom we, consider as inferior are actually the origins of science and mathematics and everything else that we see around us, architecture, construction, everything else that we see around us, and writing, and even the use of speech. Right? He came to that conclusion. Sigmund Freud knew that it wasn't so, because they went digging and they came up with papyruses that showed African greatness. Edwin, Smith papyrus, which showed that 2,000 years before Hippocrates, Hippocrates and the so-called Hippocratic oath was Imhotep, who was the first multi-genius, and then who first brain surgeon and everything else. And he was an African, black African. And the Greeks themselves worshipped him as Clepius, as the god of medicine. and the Greeks themselves admitted that all their knowledge came from Africa. So the only gap has been the dissemination of all this truth, to our people and our children and in schools. But when you have people who have so successfully tried to destroy, obliterate your achievements, right, and co-opt and steal all your credit, right, infiltrating your education system and curriculum, then this does not become known and available to our children. And as a result, then they look around them and they think that everything that they see around them came from some other people, right? Which is not the truth. So that's where the challenge is to be able to write our own books, like Sister Chinese, your book about Kinofa, right? And how inspirational that would be to British Africans, African British. You understand? Is to get it across. Unfortunately, look, our modern times, makes that to some sense possible. The information age makes it possible to be able to do research at the click of a button and then debunk all these things. Now, then the big issue is reach. How do we propagate and let it reach, everybody, and to reach our children, and then to get it into schools, so, and that is going to be a big, big game changer. Because as somebody said, if you talk and nobody hears you, I mean, have you talked? you know, the story of the big tree that fell in the forest and nobody had the big tree, so has a big tree fallen. So effectively, that has been the challenge. During the period of enslavement and through colonialism, obviously they as part of this whole project, they also colonize information, they colonize knowledge, they colonize information, they colonize knowledge, they colonize everything, you know, such that then you can understand why then people, still wallowed in ignorance, but not in this information age. Right now, I would just shift to a bit on, even then, you had all these great people who knew about the true African history. I'll quote from an anonymous source, who say that supremacist history is a permanent and ongoing conspiracy against truth, and it's ongoing, right? And I mean, you've seen that in the US, for instance, a supremacist called Donald Trump going on about, elections were stolen, and then they will just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. I mean, they know they are lying. They know that we know that they are lying. And they know that we know that they are lying, and yet they will continue to lie, right? They just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it, because then they will know that the truth of African history is a threat, to this whole ideology and its eventual collapse, and it will eventually collapse. It will eventually collapse, because there isn't anything that is permanent. And then on my Facebook pages, I have about a million followers on Real African Books. You see all the comments, and then the invasion, the interference is what they do. A lot of them, why people just invade and then they want to make comments. And these days, you are able to simply just back your post with references. And yeah, at the end of the day, you are able to just debunk everything that that they say. And literally, what I believe is happening here is that they're fearful of retribution, right? So just as some of the thing, because they know that it's not going to last. And then I often remind them that there was once upon a time, Britain ruled the world, right? They had the biggest empire, in history. They ruled about a quarter of and plundered everybody. But where are they now? I mean, it's reduced back to a little island, right? They even plundered India, they plundered China, they plundered most of Africa and everywhere. but now it's reduced. I mean, and that happened over a period of 100 years. It's been reduced to just a little tiny island, and Scotland leaves, then nothing. So then where is that supremacy? They no longer supreme. And tomorrow, if China says jump, China, which they planned it, if China says jump, they will say how high, right? So that's the nature of things. That um, Britain has been reduced back to an island and is no longer any major power. And nobody else then should also, imagine that America will be like that or Africa will remain like that, because the landscape, would completely change in another 100 years, and Africa will be back on top, right? And you can give the example that just 500 or 600 years ago, Mali was the biggest empire. Had the second biggest empire in the world and was the wealthiest country, Mali. Okay, now Mali is one of the poorest, right? And I'm saying that, and are they going to remain like that? In the fluidity and dynamics of things, in 200 years, Mali could come back on top. So this whole conception of, and those are some of the messages that we should be telling our children. That it's a shuffling world, right? And what they see now, the present is never the future. The present is never the future. But once we know that we are the ones that have created this world that you see around us, that they've borrowed and stolen our credit and stolen everything of ours. Once we get our awareness, they are the next generation that will make Africa rise to the top, because inherently, they have the DNA of all the great people, the great forebears. Well, I was talking about definitions, and on the last occasion, I mentioned the audacity or the egregiousness by which this whole false ideology propagates. To the extent where you had the British, Professor Roper, the British professor at Oxford, who in the 60s declared that Africa had no history, and that the history of Africa is the history of the white man in Africa. The question is, didn't he know the truth? He must have known the truth, but they continue to lie anyway, because telling the truth will literally do what? Obliterate or dismantle all their ideologies and philosophies, and reduce it to dust. They must have known. If you're a professor, they must have known. And more recently, there was Jackson, an archaeologist, British archaeologist, an archaeologist. You check, is it Andrew Jackson, who was on YouTube talking about that? Oh no, look, on the evidence, it's not like Africans lived in huts or anything, and that there were massive cities, in the past years, right? 600 years in Mali and Niger and Chad, they had cities, right? And that is so Timbuktu was 6 times bigger than London that time, right? And had all those, as you would have known, universities of Sankore and Jenny. And scholars actually traveled to Timbuktu to go and study. European scholars, Arab scholars, they went there to go and study. And the evidence is right there in the manuscripts of Timbuktu. So if all this information is made part of curriculum, and how we can make it part of curriculum is to write it. And what I've always insisted, that it's not only about writing it, we write it and abridge it. If you see books written by, white people, they abridge it, and, for children, right? They illustrate it, they abridge it, and then put it in their school curriculum and make it text, as part of study. So they become successful. But we understand that Africans don't own big, massive public, companies and distribution networks, such that sometimes this gets through. But in Black countries and in African countries, they surely do control education policy, right? So then often it baffles me why all these books, and there are several of them, are there, They haven't, embarked on a mission to abridge them for schools. And even at the university level, you don't find them as prescribed text. So there are challenges, but it also often has to do with politics, right? They will keep interfering with you. They say do democracy, and after that they keep um, literally funding both sides, and then whoever comes to the power is becomes their puppet, and then they influence education policymakers. They give scholarships to your children to go and study, and when they come back, their consciousness is completely different, right? you know, and that happened in the colonial era. They identified the children of chiefs and give them scholarships to go to universities in Britain and America. And by the time you come back, they'll turn you into a Roman, right? And then if they come back into, you should not be surprised if your children become Romans. And then when they come out of the system and they get into positions of authority, it becomes now very difficult for them to really assert themselves, and they literally create puppets, right? Puppets. But even then, I'm not saying it. I mean, you find books, like The Miseducation of the Negro, Carter Woodson. Well, he started to be the father of Black history, and today, 1st February, is this Black History Month. As now stands, and look, he's analyzed all that in The Miseducation of the Negro. It was published in 1933, right? He wrote other books. Kwame Nkrumah and all those, they wrote books. But what you find is that rarely you don't find these as part of the core text of African schools or even at the university level, So, and why is this so? I mean, those are all issues that have to be interrogated because it becomes part of the whole problem of trying to extricate ourselves mentally, from where we find ourselves, you know. So yeah, so then the big lie, they keep perpetuating it. Miriam Makeba, I'm sure you know her. The famous South African singer Miriam Makeba put it this way. He says that, look, um, people have invaded, you cannot come and tell the truth about the invasion, because they have to cover it up. It's like somebody, who wants to do the perfect murder, right? When people go and commit crime, what they do is to try and cover it up, right? So if you've invaded people and you've stolen their everything, then your next step is to get your writers to move in and tell lies about the plunder, right? Nobody, no robber goes to rob somebody and after that says that, oh, he did anything wrong, right? If you allow the robber to tell the story of the robbery, you have a completely different story, right? So, well, I'm speaking as a lawyer. I mean, I hear it all the time. I mean, they're all not guilty all the time, and then they cook up stories for us to defend. So I don't what happens. So it says, look, you do not expect people who come and invade you to tell the truth about you, right? They come and the funny part, William Makiba added that he was an activist and he married Stoke Carmichael. That's Kwame Ture at some point in Guinea, and he's saying that before the white man comes to a place, when the white man comes to a place, that nothing exists, right? He comes and he writes history, and then suddenly he fills in a lot of blanks, and he doesn't even, you don't even exist until he comes and then he writes and says that you exist. Then boof, now you exist, which then she said that is ridiculous, right? Um, they go and then they blind themselves to all the evidence that they see before them. And when they see evidence, then they try and assign it to some other. You've heard about it, in Zimbabwe, the ruins of Zimbabwe, the magnificence of the ruins of Zimbabwe that dates, 900 years ago. They did a lot of work to try and assign it to some other people, Africa's contact with some other people, Portuguese or people who built the ruins of Zimbabwe, 11th century. That was built by the Shona people. And they actually, when another white man tried to tell the truth, he was banished, and he lost his job, and he had to go to University of Ife. I've forgotten his name for now. So that's the extent to which they would go, to simply lie about everything, and to simply lie about everything. Which brings me the famous quote. Everybody would have heard about it. If you let the tale of the hunt be told by the hunter, the lions must learn to write their own history. Otherwise, that is it. They're gonna keep perpetuating these false notions as long as they can. It benefits them, right? Economically and everything else. And the primary motivation has always been economic, right? And then that's it. On Facebook, you find Black people themselves. I mean, a lot of gaslighting has also taken place, and the gaslighting has come in various forms. Apart from education systems, religion, right, which literally has been the co-option of African spirituality. Language, even the language that we use, right? Using English, and then our thought processes will be in English. And once you have English as the dominant language, literally it puts them in a position to be able to control narratives. Well, the flip side is that often Africans know English and another language, and it's because they don't know in any other language. We speak to them in English because they don't know any other language. So at the end of the day, it will be advantageous to us. But even language doesn't originate for them, or you trace the history of the language, they cannot actually even claim it. So that's the thing. And then media and your iconography, putting up a white Jesus and narratives, but all of it. Once you begin to delve into history, you discover that all the organized religion actually originate from concepts that developed in Africa. Mother, son, concept, Isis and Osiris, Amen, who is still there in the Nile Valley, who for 3,000 years was the supreme being around the world, such that when there was a Greek conquest, they called their gods, they syncretized it and called it, you had Zeus, Amen, you had Jupiter, Amen, and then when the Jupiter, Amen, and then Zeus, Amen, when the Greeks were there, they syncretized Amen or Amun Ra. And the point is that all this evidence, all you have to do is to look up the history of everything. I mean, that's what I've always advised everybody. If you want to know the truth, simply now you've got Google, and now you even have Chat GPT, which is making, causing, raves. Chat GPT or Google, you simply look up the history of everything. The history of Africa. It will come. All of them will tell. Are there, right? And the history and all of it is there. And whoever the so-called white supremacy, they know it. And if you go to Amazon and look up the books, they're all there. I mean, there's the Egyptian book of the coming forth by day. And then you go through it and discover a lot of these religious concepts, arose from Africa because they went digging and then they dug up all these papyrus. And then all those concepts, or even some biblical quotes in Proverbs and various places, you find translations and transliterations of them that has found its way from the papyrus of Enai that was 1,500 years BC, before Christ, and that has found its way into the Bible. So faith is also another angle by which a lot of gaslighting has taken place. Not to say that people shouldn't believe what they should believe. I mean, if you believe and then it works for you, that's okay. But know that the source of that belief, comes from the original man, right? And literally, you know, people throughout history, or this whole ideology of white supremacy, has rewritten it and translated it. They've selected proportions they like. Um, they've rewritten it. They've got versions, several versions, you know, and they keep recreating it for their own purposes, right? So that at some point you even had what they call the slave Bible, right? And it's in the New York Museum. And the slave Bible, what it did was they edited and rewrote the Bible at some point, and then remove portions, that encourages, rebellion, right? And then emphasize portions that said, oh, slaves must obey Ephesians, that says slaves obey your masters because, it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's all there, right? The slave Bible is there in the New York Museum. When you go there, just Google the slave Bible, right? So effectively, even the Bible itself has been distorted and rewritten and portions put in to literally buttress this whole project of gaslighting, blacks who adopt the faith. And a lot of it was that faith was forced upon us, and the iconography, the white Jesus and all the iconography, has been used to buttress this whole project, So those are all some of the things, so that I reach a stage where a lot of black people or Africans don't even challenge anything, And it's our duty to write the correct thing and then challenge all these ideas and concepts, because then we want the next generation not to fall into, the traps of where we are, where now through all these interruptions and gaslighting and sowing of disunity among blacks, it's difficult for black people living around the world to find cohesion, right? Because we've been confused with all ideas and, hijacking of our systems, so at the end of the day, a lot needs to be rewritten. And beyond that, what I feel should be our fundamental mission is to begin to recreate our own systems, right? Nobody designs a system. There's a key value in design, right? Design, because nobody designs anything for your benefit, right? So if you have organized religion, then somebody designs organized religion, right? And then tries to sell it to you through propaganda. And by the way, people should Google propaganda. Propaganda comes from the 14th century, was when the Association of Catholic Priests, that they call them a propaganda, and then they send them across to go and literally indoctrinate other people their with their stories, right? So you look up the word propaganda, definition of propaganda, right? And that has been a key tool, to literally um, sell their ideologies through propaganda and through religion, through culture, through cultural imperialism, through media, through Hollywood, through images and narratives. To a large extent, they've been successful at selling the poison, which now we have come to identify as so-called the false notion of white supremacy. So effectively, it's a question of design. African states and black people all the way have to focus on design. And by design, we've got to be able to take inspiration from our history. We've got to design or redesign our educational systems and curriculum. We've got to design and redesign our social systems. We've got to design and redesign our judicial systems and our political systems and everything systems, right? Our systems and institutions, they all literally have to be redesigned. Understand? And that's the job of the African intellectuals, to be able to redesign all these systems that have been imposed upon us, that we struggle with, and that have been plugged into systems that sit in Europe and America, right? Who are the protectors of this whole idea of white supremacy? If we sit around and then they design financial systems for us, and we can't redesign financial systems that benefits us, we're not going to make much progress. And then you will discover that anybody who comes up with new ideas or redesign that financial system, they will rally around and wage war, right? Now the US is thinking about waging war on China because China have asserted themselves, right? And everybody knows the story of Gaddafi, right? And Gaddafi, one of the reasons why, even though he was trying to play nice with these Western powers, why they went around killing him, was because he wanted to introduce a gold-backed currency, right? He wanted to redesign all these financial systems. And then, because Africa has the resources, currency is just paper and it has to be backed by assets. And all those assets are resources in Africa, and they wanted to redesign and have a gold-backed currency. And then they will come out hard against you, right? And it doesn't mean that it should stop us from redesigning all these systems and legal systems and all these systems and institutions that has to plug in and then become part of a pecking order where we remain up at the bottom about with all these institutions and systems while they remain at the top and call the shots, right? All of them have to simply be redesigned. But paramount would be education, because education is the most powerful tool, and our curriculum, that'll be the most powerful tool that eradicate what we as popularly um, become known as mental slavery or mental colonization. And you see a lot of it throughout history, even during the period of enslavement, where the blacks were not allowed to read anything but the Bible. You know, they were not allowed to read any books of philosophy or anything. They were just allowed to read the Bible. And then they designed systems like the book by Cock Jones, the Presbyterian reverend who in 1843 published the book on the religious instruction of the Negroes in the United States. And when you read the book and look at this, it captures history of enslavement. There goes on the systems and devices by which blacks, through preaching the Bible and through giving them the Bible and controlling it, can become docile and domesticated, right? And be submissive and respect the white man as supreme and worship him, while then they exploit his labor, right? They wrote out books that became standard operating, the religious instructions of the Negroes in the United States become standard operating procedure right up to today. But I also take issue with our brothers, right, who instead of recreating or reinventing, I'm saying yes, if you're a Christian, great, belief is necessary. If it helps you, it's great. If you're a Muslim and it helps you, it solves a problem, great. If it doesn't, you must chuck it into the bin, right? And find another belief system. But if your belief helps you, it's great. But what you should be doing is to recreating that belief system. If possible, if you have to write your own Bible, write your own Bible, right? And then put yourself at the center, of it. The least you can do, and which is true, is iconography. Nobody should be putting up images of a white Jesus, because Jesus was not white. I mean, he was black. Put up those images alone. Those are powerful, powerful things to do, right? The imagery, and if there are narratives, those narratives in the Bible, one must know that all those narratives came from Africa, and then it must be contextualized. You know, it must be the Ethiopian Bible does have Jesus as an Afro. It's still there. It's the oldest illustrated Bible, and then if you look into it, the images look like them. So at the end of the day, your God must look like you. Then you become powerful, right? Because Even the Bible will tell you that you are in the image of God. So if you are the image of God, then the God must look like you, right? And what has happened to Africans is that we are among the only people who they've so successfully pillaged that even in our consciousness, we adopt the belief systems of others. But belief is the foundation stone of progress. And what you believe becomes important, right? Whether you believe that you can or believe that you can't is both right. And once you begin to have your belief system rooted in images and narratives that are like you, and that God looks like you, then that's when Africa will become powerful. And if that belief, is corrupted, then it's our duty to also build the whole belief system. But what has happened with Africans is our own brothers and sisters who keep replicating it, who have been co-opted into belief in some white images or Arab images or Arab narratives or white narratives. And then they've become complicit in propagating things that slowly destroys us and mentally colonizes us, because then it's profitable, right? You know, an illustration. Look, if you control a man's mind, you don't have to put a gun to his head, because all you have to say is that God there sitting in Rome says, right? And then that's it. And then it becomes a tool for even economic, extraction. Recently, I saw that the Catholic Church in Togo, now the Pope is going to the Congo DR, and they say, oh, there are 236 million, um, you know, uh, Catholics in Africa. The Catholic Church in Togo collects more money, revenue than the government, that the government collects, tax revenues. Because the church has all kinds of products, births, deaths, marriages, good luck, this charms, whatever, right? And they collect tax-free more money than the tax revenue. And most of it then is sent to Rome. So these are all these things. But often, what I'm trying to say is that now you get mega churches who then keep preaching it and reinforcing religion as a tool of the false ideology of white supremacy, because then it becomes profitable to your pastors and your bishops and whoever as well, because then you get mega pastors who fly around in private jets, while the congregation walk, right? They sell them all these beliefs and hopes, and then they profit from it, so it's in their interest to do that. But now, if you want real people, or conscious people who want to transform the continent to its rightful place at the top, then it becomes poison. Becomes poisonous. So these are some of the things. But I'll probably stop here for you to also hear some opinion from you, Shanice.
Thank you so much.
Some of your experiences. Well, before I continue, yeah.
It was quite an extensive list. Lots of comments coming in. So let's bring the audience in, shall we? And bring in some of their comments, points, and opinions. So let's go. Speak it. Kwame's saying, speak it, Push. We are so pathetically misguided. And that goes back to what you were saying about the miseducation system, and the need for us to just start building all of our own. So let's see what is being said here. Kwame is also reminding us that Marcus Garvey actually produced the Black Print. So that's something you might want to come back to. So we don't even have to have a think tank to develop a strategy. We already have a strategy, and I'm sure it's as relevant today as it was back then. But let's continue through. So Kwame is saying JC is the original African from Kush. Okay, let's see what Afrojava is saying. She's saying, so true. We really don't need new models. Marcus Garvey gave us a blueprint. We just need to take action and be the writers on our history throughout our lives. So yes, we do need to be the writers of our own history. And I think I mentioned to you that I'm thinking of doing a seminar or an event at some point in the near future to encourage and inspire more of our people to write, to become authors, and to publish books. So that's something that we're going to be working on behind the scenes. Need to make that happen. Let me bring one more, and then I'll go back to you for your thoughts on the comments so far.
Right.
Angie says the Confucius Institute at the University of Ghana takes root in the University of Ghana to train students to acquire special skills in Chinese language in Ghana. Ghana must wake up fast. Oh. Are they teaching our children Chinese in the University of Ghana? And why, if that is the case?
Yeah. It's part of this cultural imperialism. And when that happens, it's literally at the mind level, that
Mm,
they try to make you subservient, right? Um, in the first place, on the issue of language, right? Mother tongue education is vital to development, and throughout, it's been tested. No country develops on the tongue of another, right?
mm,
The Germans don't run the education system in another person's language in Germany, or the Russians, or the Koreans,
mm,
you know, or
mm,
everywhere. Nobody. It's it doesn't make any sense, right?
mm,
Um,
mm,
because there have been in education, there've been all these pilot projects where they show that where children they start from grade one, in their mother tongue, and they teach them scientific concepts and everything else in their mother tongue, right?
mm,
And they are in the same classroom with children who start in English. By the
mm.
time they reach the third grade, those who have been taught in their mother tongue are far ahead of those who
Wow,
learn in another language, right? So,
that's
mother
simple. Yeah.
mother tongue education is vital.
Mm,
Chinese
mm,
are not going to develop on English, right? Or the Russians or the Spanish. It's only in Africa that you find that they've managed to infiltrate and oppress us and suppress us to the extent where, and then giving scholarships to our leaders all over and their children, such that you can't even begin to talk about mother tongue education. But gradually, it's taking root. In Ghana,
mm,
they put up a pilot project about mother tongue education, and in South Africa, they did a pilot project in one of the Eastern Capes because they realized that that was the key to bring out the
mm,
full potential of the African child.
mhm,
The
mhm,
whole idea is not to say, okay, fine, English has become a dominant language, world language. It doesn't mean that you don't learn English, but at the root of your education is your mother tongue, and you also learn English as a second language, right, to be able to communicate with the rest of the world. The Chinese learn English, yes, but they don't run an educational system on English, but they will learn English as a second language, or they will
mm,
learn
mm,
another language. So mother tongue education, is vital to development and concepts, and also it helps develop your own language rather than keep it,
mm,
in the closet. So that's just a commentary on when they talk about Chinese doing that. So that's the first thing that they would do. I mean, as part of all this, they'll come and set up institutes, Goethe Institute to develop the German language, or Alliance Française. And then the Chinese have also learned that. So they'll come and then they want you to learn stuff in Chinese, right? Um, because they also are building their empire, their imperialism, right? So, so these are all the things, and it's part of the duty of African intellectuals to challenge all these things, right? And perhaps to also go into government, because you find out they'll come and bribe your politicians, and then they're not going to listen to anything when you tell them that this is the right way to go. And also the gentleman who commented about Garvey, that is true. That's what I've always insisted, that if you read about Marcus Garvey, right, he's probably the greatest, one of the greatest, or the greatest black man who ever lived, right? And his
mm,
achievements, was just massive. He really did not simply talk he walked the talk, right? About these massive organizations as an example, and actually inspired a lot of your liberation and independence movement in Africa. I mean, he was such a great man. I'm not rivaled. But then, as Bobandi said, Marcus Garvey was sold for rice. Well, it's not true that he was actually sold for rice, but it was just to illustrate that then at the end of the day is then they managed to infiltrate black people such that black people that are themselves, who betrayed Marcus Garvey, and then went to tell on him, and then he ended up being deported, served the 2-year jail sentence, and getting deported back to Jamaica, and then went to Britain and died. So he's right, Marcus Garvey was, I think he wrote a book, but he was a big inspiration, right, as to the where to go. And it wasn't only Marcus Garvey, right? He inspired Padmore, and there were all these great people, George Padmore, Marcus Garvey, and all those West Indians, is it Blyden? And Kwame Nkrumah and all those people were inspired by Garvey and Jomo Kenyatta and everything. And up to today, they've written books, right? You've got books of all these intellectuals also, Van Settima. You've got the books on the destruction of black civilization, right? Here, Chancellor Williams. You've got J.L. James. You've got John Hendrik Clark. They all wrote books. This is the Egyptian book of the coming forth by day. Kwame Nkrumah wrote Africa Must Unite. All these books are there, right? Even if you go to Amazon today, there's a book also written by a lot of professors, Black History. But the whole thing is, and I also spoke about a book, that much as we say things against that of white supremacy and all those things, there are also a lot of white people themselves who've written books. And this particular book is White Malice. If you look it up, it goes into detail. It's a UK researcher, and it's a brilliant book, written by a white person about white malice, right? And it comes up with deep research, and through in the post-independence Africa and all your African leaders, and the true story behind the assassinations of Patrice Lumumba and how they undermined African independence, and then the CIA was instrumental in overthrow Kwame Nkrumah because they saw him as a threat, and he wrote a book on neo-colonialism, right? And the machinations behind it, how they created puppets like Mobutu to undermine African development and this thing, African progress, and then turn back to come and say that Africans cannot govern themselves. So apart from all the black intellectuals and books, Miseducation of the Negro, all these people, there are several books, and Clark and Anthony Broider, the Nile Valley Civilization. Now, all those things are available there, but you don't see them as integrated or meshed into our education system, or propagated or abridged, for our children to be able to read them, such that it sifts through our consciousness and then shows us the pathway to self-determination, a pathway to how we can begin to design and redesign ourselves to, get to our rightful place. If you look at for instance, Africa Must Unite, it's literally a blueprint on where we should be going. But you ask a lot of Pan-Africanists, have you read it? They haven't read it, right? But now, what happens is that then we just keep talking. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you talk about economic freedom or economic emancipation, Kwame Nkrumah analyzed all that from his background and from his practical experience, when he was president of Ghana. And why I'm saying that is that, at the end of the day, if you want to know everything, first research the history of that particular subject, and then you become enlightened, right? And as I've always said, nobody goes to a doctor you shouldn't go to a doctor who does not have your medical history. or hire a lawyer who doesn't know the case history or what they call case law. So why do we educate ourselves and educate our children without first giving a thorough grounding in the history of it, our history and the history of the subject? I mean, in fact, history should be the foundation stone of every educational system. That's why I'm saying when we redesign our education systems and our curriculum from grade one, history, or all these books are bridged, right, and illustrated. All these books that our intellectuals, our forebears have shown us the pathway should begin at that level abridged and should be taught as the beginning of our education. And then as on our own languages, as translated into our own languages as a foundation stone of the systems that we will redesign. Right. And well, apart from education, I've also mentioned the laws. When white supremacy wants to do anything, they start with the laws, right? First, they create the capacity for violence through their armies. So yeah, support the troops. All right. They're always very concerned about the troops, right? Because they enforce all the evil things that they want to do, right? Then after that, they try and legitimize that with what? With laws, right? They create systems and laws, and then DeSantis in Florida will come and say, yeah, the woke law, anti-woke law, and all those things. They create laws, and they create Jim Crow laws. South Africa, they took it to new heights by creating apartheid laws, right? And then they create the capacity for violence to be able to enforce those laws. And then the philosophy or underpinning all that is the false ideology of them trying to remain on top economically for their economic benefits so that they can have a nice time here on earth, at our expense, So those are all these things that need to be challenged, right? Militarily, Kwame Nkrumah set up, the Organization of African Unity when he was the founding members, right? He talked about the speed to be, reunite, abolish all these borders, colonial borders that were created, and forge ahead with the concept of a united Africa right from the beginning. And that was in 1963, right? Because the more you delay, then he said that then they'll begin to infiltrate and then cut us apart and create puppets, and then it won't happen, right? I'm on the same page with the gentleman who says, look, all these things are not new. We keep reinventing the wheel. But if we go back and look at what Makuvazi said or what Malcolm X said, right? All these true Africans or who were all these what I call them the truth tellers, Khalid Muhammad and all those things. If we go back and then recapture everything that they've said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The pathway is already there. Now, what is left is with the implementation. And back to Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah gave the blueprint. First was unity, and naturally tried to do that with Mali, Guinea, and the Congo. And he mentored Patrice Lumumba, right, at the All African People's Congress, which was the that was in 1958, right? And that was a massive Congress, and you see it, all of it detailed in this book. It was not written by a black person, but our advice, white malice. I'll just all of it is detailed there, and then you see how constantly the ideology of white people have tried to undermine this whole idea. I'll just quickly read from a little bit from the blurb. They say in White Malice, Susan Williams announced the covert operations pursued by the CIA from Ghana to the Congo to the UN in an effort to frustrate and deny Africa's new generation of nationalist leaders. This dramatically upends the conventional belief that African nations fail to establish effective democratic states on their own accord. As the old European powers moved out, the US moved in, and it's very detailed and very well researched. But back to Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah literally gave the blueprint. He talked about a common African currency long before the EU came up, this idea of euro. He talked about a common African identity, a common African passport, a common African defense system, and many others, 17 points. But then, even then, at that time, they managed, and all those things. Now you have NATO and all those things, but all the things that the blueprint that he gave for African success, was undermined. And then what happened? Years down the line, the European Union, they keep implementing all these things. You've got NATO. Where have Africans now? We have the African free trade area. But where have they come up and said, look, let's sign a pact that says that if you attack one of us, it's an attack on us all. And all of us will be obliged to literally respond as one. They haven't, because they will keep infiltrating. And then when you set up the Pan-African Parliament, 60% of its budget will come from the European Union. They'll be the first to come and say, oh, no, we'll give you money, right? If you want to build the headquarters of the African Union in Addis Ababa, the Chinese are the first to say, oh, no, okay, look, we'll put it for you, it's free, right? There's no free lunch, right? There's no free lunch. And then, it keeps going on and on. So, look, your commentators are spot on. That a lot of things that we still have to resolve. And I'm saying, difficult as it may seem in all areas, right? Whether through financial systems or religious systems, organized religion, or through media, or through everything, it may seem daunting, but the world changes, and we simply have to go at it. And then all we are saying is that the foundation stone, that will be the game changer, that will change everything, is African history. Because African history is the truth, and it's world history. And once you have it there and we propagate it, and we have it through our own educational systems and curriculum, the unfolding of the African history will simply just overthrow everything that we've been told or we've heard. And, it will destroy this thing. That's why in Florida and various places in the United States, they're so scared that now they have to come up with laws, right? They have to come up with laws, and then they try and brand it like CRT. CRT, there's nothing wrong with CRT. Simply tell the truth about race, how race has influenced the shaping of America. It's the truth. But they don't like it because that's the biggest thing that they have to be afraid of. And I think, this, one of my favorite also stories that I tell about why we must have our own belief systems, or we must grow and if possible, develop and reform our own belief systems. I said it at that time. It's a story of Haiti, right? Haiti didn't manage to be inspired by their own voodoo belief system, right? And they managed to defeat all the imperial powers, including Napoleon. The whites, of course, won't talk about it until we are telling the history, and we are telling it for our children. You saw a bit about Toussaint Louverture as a kid in Black Panther 2. But like I'm saying, these are the stories that should be part of our educational curriculum. But trust me, they will come and try and interfere with it, because they come with money, they come with their publishing companies and try and interfere, because they know that it's a big threat. But if anybody has to really examine the history of Haiti, then 22nd, independent republic, in the Western Hemisphere, democratic, right? And they inspired the liberation of other countries, in Latin America, right? Bolivar, Bolivia and Colombia and all those places. Haiti gave free ships. But the important thing was that you had Napoleon send one of the biggest expeditions to crush Haiti, Napoleon Bonaparte and his brother-in-law Leclerc. But Haiti defeated them. The white people don't want to talk about it, because then it shows that they're not so superior then, right? Haiti defeated the Spanish, they defeated the British, they defeated the French, they defeated all the imperial powers. But at the root of it was Duty Buckman and Cecile, the lady. Those were the spiritual leaders. And what they did was to inspire them with their own West African belief system, right? Did rituals and then showed them that, look, and then went and then pronounced that the white man's religion is evil, right? And it's meant to subjugate you, and your African God has given you the power to be able to defeat them. And it was with that belief system that they managed to triumph over all the imperial powers that were supposed to be far more powerful, right? So then the question I ask is that if Haiti had gone to face Britain, America, Spain, and they were carrying the white Jesus, would they have won any war, right? Would they have been empowered enough to have been able to defeat them? I tell you, no, right? But when they went with their own belief systems, that's when they won. They triumphed over all this established independent state, right? So that is the power of belief, and our own belief systems, even if it's not being propagated, propaganda, we haven't done enough propaganda or reformed them or made it more accessible and more friendlier to develop voodoo and all our traditional African belief systems that will empower us. The time to do it is now, right? Because this whole idea of a white Jesus and all the religions that came, all I've done is to literally just continue to keep us suppressed. The Arabs saw that, and then years later they came up with their own religious concepts, right? And then use also force and conquest and plunder and forces on others. And then Africans are now some of them proud to become Muslims. But at the root of it is that belief is the foundation stone. And if you don't have your own belief systems and your God that looks like you, then you continue to be at the bottom of the food chain or the pecking order that other people have established for you. So that's important. Education, religion, media, culture, all these things are some of the challenges that we've got to completely erode. And like I said, all these things, the roadmaps and all these things, the values, all the books that the intellectuals have written, they are there. Unfortunately, now you can find them everywhere. And your books that you wrote, whether you showed the African kings in Kinofa and all the African kings, Septimus Severus, who was the greatest, one of Britain's greatest rulers, was African, Septimus Severus and Kinofa and all those things. We if a children reader, they know that, look, this whole idea of they are supreme, it's not so supreme if we were rulers over you, right? Or the Moors who for 800 years built a lot of the universities in Spain, right? And actually civilized them when they lived in the dark ages, right? So yeah, those are some of the things. You've got some comments there that we can expand on.
Let me take myself off mute. Yes, there are many. And Kwame Oboje was saying that Dessalines is his favorite African war general. So I wanted the audience to tell me who their favorite revolutionary person is. So who is, your favorite great one? Let's see if we can get some maybe unfamiliar names as well as obviously the familiar ones. So, today is the beginning of African History Month for our American brothers and sisters, and they are going to be remembering some of their late greats. So let's maybe spend a moment to do the same, if that's okay with you. We're approaching, we're on our way towards the top of the hour, the top of the show already. So let me hear from you. Who are some of your favorite African warriors? Angie's agreeing with Kwame there and saying, I agree, Dessalines. Ossie says, over 500 years of genocide by the White West, and African people still want them to save them. Wow, isn't that just an example of how, delirious we are right now and how confused we are? Wow, wow, wow. So we've got Nat Turner coming up. We've got Marcus Messiah Garvey. We've got Carlos Cooks. Oh, Carlos Cooks. I'm not familiar with Carlos Cooks. DJ, the Jamaican Drunko. Good to have you in your house. Yeah, give us one or two lines, please, about Carlos Cooks. Yeah. Let's go back and see what comments we've got. Oh, we've got our brother Geb in the house. He says our first belief system, let's put it up on the screen. Our first belief system must be every white man, woman, and child is the devil and can never be trusted. Wow. What do you say about that, Professor Commey?
Yeah, um, literally, the vast majority of them have signed on to that ideology, that evil, poisonous ideology, right? Because it makes no sense, right? And the retail of that poisonous ideology has even been colorism, right? Where now they use it as a basis to distribute benefits and privileges in the US, where if you have a lighter skin, or even in Africa, they bleach their skin because it's done so much damage to our consciousness that a lot of ignorant Africans subscribe, or in the US, colorism, because as an offshoot of racism and this ideology has been that then you're lighter the skin, then the more they give you privileges, because then a lot of even the lighter skinned people were literally just simply African women who were raped, right? And as a result, even though they couldn't accept them into the fold of white supremacy, then they granted them privileges. And then that's where then you have, as Malcolm X said, your house Negro and your field Negro. And then through this whole idea of colorism, that spread. Then they use it to buttress, which is just absurd. I mean, that your color of your skin somehow, makes you better than anybody. Even the concept of it is just crazy. If you examine it, it's crazy, right? But so effective, was it that that was how it was, even when now it was replicated all over the world, in Australia, New Zealand, and everywhere else, including South Africa. They made laws to that effect, where now they distributed privileges to people who were of mixed race and who had a lighter skin, and the blacks were at the bottom, and they put them, they call them colored people, such that even today in South Africa, people identify as colored, right? Because that's what they made laws that said colored people, this, and then they occupied the middle ground, and then you had black people at the bottom, and then they remained on top. And then they were not apologetic about it. They called it BASCAP, or dominance. They're running the principle of dominance, right? They literally, took it to another level. But it has been all there. I mean, once you look into the history, and that's why I advise anybody, if you want to look at any topic, the first thing you look at is the history of the topic. It's got a lot of the laws that were made in the US during the Jim Crow era, where it was simply the laws that were simply copied here, here. In 1904, you had, um, laws, where prevented blacks from drinking at fountains or sitting in, going to the beaches, sharing beaches, and not using the same railway coaches and all those things. It's the same laws that were replicated around the world in the service of that ideology, which here in South Africa, they literally codified it, right? So all of it has to be challenged. Laws have to be challenged. And now in South Africa, they kind of, they build a constitution, and now we are all nice again, and then they promote Mandela as a man of reconciliation. But then, and then you discover that, obviously the whites in South Africa want to get past this whole thing because they know that it's going to destroy them, right? The more time goes and we live in the formational age, this whole blacks rising up is going to destroy them. So they have to promote the reconciliation man, there's a Mandela, right? As now everything is fine. But it still remains the most unequal country in the world. When you come here, the blacks, the whites manage wealth and the blacks manage poverty, right? And then the grant privileges to a few white people through designing what they call black economic empowerment. A few black people, and then they put them up. That's, oh no, we are all fine because you've got one or two black billionaires, right? But when you go to the JSE, blacks, 80% of blacks, don't own even 5% of the stock at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. But you got 9% of whites who, and their networks, who own about 95% of the wealth at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And still today, 80% of the land is in 9% of white hands. 30 years after independence. Because what they do is they simply look for black assets who have political connections, and then they literally give them stocks and shares, and literally bribe them to become an insurance against their continued plunder of the country. So otherwise, then nothing explains why 30 years after independence, blacks remain at the bottom of the food chain. Okay, back to the question because I digress. Look, it is not so. You do find a number of white people who want to tell the truth, right? I gave an example of the book by Susan Williams, right? And some of them like Count Volney, right? Who spoke the truth. And throughout history, you discover that some have tried to tell the truth within, the confines of the systems in which they live, right? Um, and then you also will find blacks uh, who betray us, right? Um, I give the example of the sold Marcus Garvey for rice, right? And if you read the book, White Malice, it was Kwame Nkrumah, some of his own ministers and some of his closest people who betrayed him to the CIA and were sending information, and they were sending, cables to the CIA to report on his movements and everything else, right? He actually fired some of them, discovered some of them and fired them, right? It's been the narrative that blacks also are co-opted. Is it Newton, the Black Panther, the founder of Black Panther, right? What was his name again? Is it Newton Huey? It was his own, one of his bodyguards who betrayed him to the Chicago police, and then they went and then killed him, right? So that happens. You also do find white people who want, as I said, want to tell some of the freedom riders and everything, white people who were beaten up by their own, right? The white world or white, supremacy sees them as traitors, right? Same thing, among blacks, you find black traitors. In South Africa, you do find people who collaborated with the apartheid system, perhaps sometimes out of personal, um, preservation or the benefits that are dispensed to them. So it happens. But obviously, look, the large majority of people simply just sign on onto the ideology. And then you do find black people too who betray who betray their own. But it's not anything unusual in the sense that even among the Nazis, you found Jewish collaborators. All right. When you went to Poland, you find Polish people who collaborated with the Nazis, right? So in every society, yes, you find people who will go against, what you describe as their own. And in South Africa, you found white people who also did fight, but they in the vast minority. I could mention Ruth First and Joe Slovo and Benes, Bayes Nordier and all those things, right? Who literally sacrificed, and Bram Fisher, somebody like a gentleman called Bram Fisher. His father was a judge president. He was one of the people who was upholding judge president of the High Court, upholding apartheid laws. But he went against all that, and they called him communist. And Bram Fisher was one of the defenders of Nelson Mandela. And Bram Fisher literally sacrificed. He was a lawyer. He sacrificed his whole life. And then the apartheid regime identified him as a traitor. And what did they do? They literally went to lock him up, and he was poisoned, and he literally died. Right? He died for the black cause, right? Because he completely rejected apartheid. So yes, you do find on both sides people, right? You find white people, but who are in the stark minority who want the truth. And then you find also even among the black people too, who literally become puppets or betray the black cause. But it's not unusual. It's as old as the story in the Bible of Judas. All right. Right. For 30 pieces of silver. And those are some of the things that you got to deal with. So that's basically to address that question posed. Not all of them are bad. I mean, yeah, not at all. And on the other hand, it's not all the blacks that are good. A lot of them, some of them will sell you for rice.
It's not funny. It is just so awful when you think of how great, Marcus Messiah Garvey was, and the extent to which we don't value our greats, the extent to which we don't see the greatness in them, maybe until after they've gone. The extent to which, anyway, where Marcus Messiah Garvey was concerned, I mean, look at his achievement. Look at what he accomplished during his lifetime.
It was a phenomenal man.
Indictment on the people, really.
But tell me, how many people really even know about the history of Marcus Garvey, right?
Well, during African History Month here in the UKKK, it's his life story is one of the few kind of life stories that our young people hear about, learn about during African History Month.
And that's why they should be making
Focus.
movies. They should be making movies about him,
It's,
right?
it's up to us, but we have got some playwrights who put
Yes.
together some excellent productions with his speeches, and so there have been some efforts. Time is running and passing. Push. I mean, you have just been galloping along at like 100 miles an hour, covering so much ground. I think I'm going to have to watch it again and again to just pull out all the gems. But there's just so much that you have been saying in there, and our history is powerful. I have to agree with you. Our history is absolutely powerful, and when we begin to realize how great we were as a people, we would begin to understand, therefore, how great we are. Because if my parents' parents, and my ancestors were great, that
Yeah.
greatness must be inside of me. So
It flows down
we're
to
all
you.
waking
Yeah.
up.
And that's your
Yeah,
inspirational and motivational power to reach the top.
absolutely.
When,
So
when,
let's
when,
wrap up.
yeah.
Let's wrap up the session now. I'm going to go over to you for you to wrap up the session with some closing remarks. I want to thank everybody in the audience as well who's been participating. I've been getting the names of some great revolutionary freedom fighters who and as I always say, for as long as we keep their names alive, they will continue to live and never die. But they will only die, when we forget to call their name, when we forget to speak about them, when we forget to tell their stories. That's when these great ones will die. So let me give you 5 minutes or so to pull all these wonderful, informative threads together.
Look, essentially, like as I've said, right? Africans are the origin of everything, so that's where they come and then look and then dig our ancestors and try to look for inspiration, right? You talk about great Europeans and you discover that, look, they went to Africa to go and look for stuff, right? Picasso never acknowledged the African inspiration for his cubist, right? The for which he got fame. I mean, his cubist movement. But he came, he went to Paris and collected African artifacts and do them, But then the one of the biggest issues have been credits. What they'll be doing now, we call it appropriation, but they've stolen every credit of ours, right? And it's only through history. It's only through retelling of Marcus Garvey's stories and abridging his stories for our children from grade one that will create that big game changer. And why then, when that happens, why the white world or white privileged world will try and suppress it and give it names and call it woke and CRT is because they are afraid of the loss of their power and privilege, and that the correct African history would destroy, and especially when they enter the education system and media and it gets propagated. So that is it. I mean, it's a war out there, it's a fight out there. But then if you stand on the pedestal of truth, then they cannot win, right? That whole idea will surely, be defeated. More recently, because they have the tools and they develop the tools of propaganda, education, media, politics, religion, and all those things as a massive onslaught to literally keep that pecking order, right? So that they live large and then they use us as, as fodder. But that's gonna change, as we live in the information age, right? So eventually, look, I'll quickly just mention one thing. When I posted there, that several great, I talked about Latimer and who that this never invented the light bulb. I spoke about that, and more recently I posted about Gladys West. I don't know if you heard about her. That it was a research, and everything that created the modern GPS as we see today. Dr. Gladys West. People should Google her. Gladys West, he worked in mathematics. We know about Katherine Johnson in hidden history, whose calculations sent the first person to the moon. We know about Gladys West. There were many others. Dean and those Thomas Mensa, who was behind fiber optics, and Philip Emeagolu, who came out with the modern They develop supercomputers that makes all the systems and internet possible. But I'm saying all this story and the history and the background is not told to inspire Africans, such that we don't even know. And then when it comes out, then everybody's surprised. Okay, so literally, once you go down through African history, they began to know that a lot of our credit have been stolen, right? And a lot of our history have been falsified. A lot of our achievements have been, obfuscated, or they try to literally not assign it to us. And why would they do that? Because they want to maintain a system, or belief system that benefits them, but which we have to challenge. And then if you have to challenge, we Africans must also develop the capacity for offense, right? America or Britain, they're not going to go to North Korea, because North Korea have also developed capabilities for offense. You know that if you attack them, they can destroy you. So they're not going to, they will talk. They're not going to go to Pakistan, because Pakistan also has weapons, right? But they will go to Libya, because Libya didn't have 1 or 2 nuclear weapons, or Saddam Hussein didn't. So they'll go in there, because there are no consequences. They don't see any consequences. Those are all capabilities that we Africans also have to. And Kwame Nkrumah tried doing that. He set up the Atomic Agency, and then they undermined him. Okay, so to wrap up, the key or the foundation stone, I'm just repeating, myself, is African history, and we have to write it. All of us, is the task of all of us. I've done my own through the 100 Great African Kings and Queens, Volume 1, Volume 2, and I'm doing 8 more volumes. And I've made it easy for everybody to read it, for them to serve as role models. And finally, to close, what I would insist on is that we've got to build and rebuild our institutions and systems, take inspiration from our past, and develop our own or redesign existing institutions and our systems that serve us, right? Work on the hardware, that is, and the software, that's at the mental level, and design our own institutions and systems, that serve us. And to say that once we have designed all these systems and our belief systems and our education systems, then the stone that was rejected will become the head of the cornerstone. And then we Africans and Black people and our diaspora, then we will become very powerful again. We'll become then very powerful and then rise to the top again. And because at the end of the day, to conclude, chosen people choose themselves, right? Chosen people choose themselves. And it's time to choose ourselves as the chosen people. And we've got backing in our history, because we are the original people. We invented and created everything. And we are the chosen people of this earth. And chosen people choose themselves. And don't run around believing that somebody is chosen people. They declare themselves chosen people. And once you begin to think that somebody else sitting somewhere in Israel is a chosen person, then you continue to be a slave. So to conclude, as Africans all over the world, we are the chosen people, and then we choose ourselves. I can't hear you. Mute.
It would help. It would help
Yeah.
if I took myself off mute, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, I've been looking down at the comments as they've been coming in, and I want to thank everybody in the chat for your contribution, for rising up the names of some of our late greats, for complimenting what our brother Pusch has been talking about today. The importance of our history, the importance of true history, because it's knowledge of that history that will make us realize our greatness. Earlier on my show, earlier today, we had Brother Marmar from the Marmar University, and we were talking about the fact that, all the gods in times of old, all the gods were Africans, all the gods had African features. Wherever we went in the world, we took the concept of our God with us, and we, created him in our image, and the power that we had back then, but we were just too divided as a people. So very importantly, we need to come together as a people. I want to thank you, Pusch, for coming on the show this evening to share your wealth of knowledge of African history, our history, true history, world history. And I hope, everyone felt that it was a good start to African History Month in the USA. Another opportunity for us to be focusing on our history and our greatness. And it's that knowledge of how great we really are as a people, that will totally destroy the myth of white supremacy. And for your contribution this evening, Push, we thank you so, so much. To everyone in the chat, rise up, rise up, rise up. More strength, more power, more vodum to each and every one of you. Sister Shanice and Brother Push out of here for now. But all being well, we will be back next Wednesday with the King himself hitting the stage. Wow, what a delight. None other than King Joshua Mapongo. But for tonight's guest, Brother Push, thank you one more time. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. One
Bye.
love. One love. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.